Welcome back. This is the voice of FX Adventure, and on this video we'll be looking at the weekly analysis as we are entering this new week, kicking off on weekday tomorrow. We do live streaming every day here on my FX Adventure. Right on this video, like I made mention, we'll be looking at the weekly overview of what we think price is doing on the weekly standpoint. I'll be looking at this using the 4-hour time frame for anybody that feels like wants to calibrate each chart to 1 hour 4-hour time frame. I mean to say, can do so in order to see the exact thing that you see right there on the chart. All right, right about here we'll be covering a couple of currency pairs, and the likes of forex. We'll be looking at the euro USD and probably maybe the British pound USD. On the futures we'll be looking at gold, and right there we'll be closing off by looking at DXY and also S&P 500. So in order to make sure you don't miss out on anything on this video, I would urge you to do what? Sit back, relax, enjoy this video, and pick out one or two knowledge or information that would help you to navigate the market going into the week we are going into. Mind you, whatever we do here is not financial advice. All we do here is to leverage technical analysis and looking at the charts together to make an understanding of what we think price is doing in real time. With that said, let's head straight to the chart. The first thing you see here is the Euro USD chart. And here on the Euro USD chart, you can see a couple of, well, I call it square boxes or boxes right there on the chart. All the boxes you see there is basically quarter times. All right, I use the time theory in analyzing, and by that you would understand that I pay close attention to what quarters do on the price action. So here on Euro USD, obviously we can see that we are actually coming off from the second quarter of the month. All right, just want to be sure. Yeah, that's the second quarter of the month if we are looking at it on the weekly standpoint. All right, so we just finished the second quarter. That means we are entering the third quarter of the month coming this week, right? This week that I'm making this video for, obviously. And one thing you can pinpoint here is that Euro USD, obviously from here, has been on a series of downward movements on the 4-hour time frame. Reason why I'm using the 4-hour time frame is because it's going to give us a holistic understanding and a much more clean price action for us to look at, to be able to see if we can make understanding of what the market is doing. I'm going to switch this to a line chart just to filter out the noise, so that we can pretty much see a clear trend of what is going on here. So right here on Euro USD, one thing I can point out is we've seen price doing something like this. You see, just by moving this to the line chart, you can see pretty much the trend that Euro USD has used in coming down ever since December last year. As of 25th December last year, Euro USD kicked off on a very downward movement using this trend line you can see that I just dropped right about there. All right, so what do we make out of this? What I make out of this is that I think we've extended quite a bit in order to see all the liquidity that Euro USD built up here. All right, so I think we've extended quite enough. Maybe we can get them to take out the liquidity lying below here for the week before we see any form of reversal. This is the low I am talking about there. All right, but in order not for us to be too deterministic or to be too predictive of what we think price is going to do, we'll rather come up with what price is doing and possibilities of how we can react on price when it does something different. So what do I expect going into this week? What I expect going into this week is, first of all, there is a clear downward trend here on the 4-hour time frame on Euro USD. So what do I make out of it? What I make out of it is that I would want to see how the next week is going to kick off. But if we are going to predict at least what we envision coming into next week, there are two things involved. The first thing involved is we can either see the week kicking off by either taking the liquidity of the Q2 of the month before giving us some sort of reversal, all right? But where I would want to drive you guys' attention mainly would be this trend line that Euro USD used in coming down. So what I envision is in a situation whereby we see price buying and going above that trend, of course, we would want to be taking a long buy going into next week. All right. With that said, if we look at it on the theoretical standpoint, when it comes to how to trade time theory, usually when there is an accumulation which occurs mainly in the Q1 or sometimes the Q2, we mainly expect a manipulation, and after that manipulation comes an expansion. For anybody that knows how accumulation manipulation works, that's simple as that. So what I envision is we need to wait and see how Euro USD is going to break out of this trend line. But with that said, there is an understanding that Euro USD is in a downward move, at least here on the 4-hour time frame. Call it a spade, no need to overanalyze that. If anything extra happens going into next week, of course, we'll be reacting the right way. But the general trend is downward, but there is expectation that we should be expecting at least a reversal. Even if that reversal is not going to be a total reversal, we can also equate it to be a pullback based off on any level that price wants to go. But the general trend, like I said, as we want to keep it simple, is that Euro USD since 2025, December 25th December 2025, Euro USD has been on a downward trend. And I think this downward trend will soon be coming to an end, if not already has come to an end. All right. So I envision a situation whereby we can take a chill pill and see if Euro USD can trade back above that trend line for us to ride it back above to take the high that was dropped around 25th December of 2025. That's that on Euro USD. All right. With that said, we'll go straight to futures. On futures, we'll be taking only gold. We have UX oil. I like to look at UX oil, but we don't want this video to be long, and that's why I am going to select the few which are more of a popular demand. All right. So here on Euro USD, obviously very nice price action that I see here on gold. All right. One thing I would want to point out again, just using the line chart, is a clear trend line that I see here. All right. The more I zoom out, the more the trend line becomes more real. So we can dubiously speculate this. We can speculate this trend line. All right. We can speculate this. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because the reason why is because you can see we have a lot of pointers. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 times price tested this trend line, which is a way of price saying that this trend line is valid. I know about this trend line, and that is what I'm using. That's basically what price is telling us on this particular guy here. Now, looking at the Q2, which just finished, the Q2 of this January, which just finished, you can see that theoretically, in relativity to the Q1, is a clear accumulation. So in a situation whereby we see a gold that is trading up going into this week, there is clear chances that we might expect a reversal after that happens. And we can also dubiously speculate that. I borrowed the word dubiously from one of my favorite guy, Cohen. So for the guys that might hear me say dubious speculation that might sound familiar, now you know where I got that statement from. All right. So we can also speculate that this trend line is actually what is going on here, and you can see that that trend line is already broken here. So what I'm expecting is to see a gold that will violate this high coming into the beginning of next week, maybe Monday, Tuesday, I don't know. Take out this high, then maybe to see price go back down. If that's not the case and gold does the opposite, which is either to go down first, then I will be aligning myself for gold to hit this trend line and continue another upward move. And the reason is because of the fact that I can relatively say that the Q2 of the month of January 2026 on gold is an accumulation. And that is why what I expect is in the beginning of this week, we should be expecting a manipulation on either direction that gold wants to manipulate to. Then after that, then the actual distribution would come into play. And that is that for gold. So judging from what we see here, like I said before now, looking at it is an accumulation when it comes to what the Q2 of the month. The Q2 of the month. All right. Now we are heading into the Q3 of the month. I am of the understanding, or the opinion rather, that we should be expecting a manipulation in the beginning of the week. Then after that, the actual direction will come into play. This is for gold. This is not financial advice again, so you know. All right. Now we'll go straight up to S&P 500. Let's have an understanding of what's going on there also. Remember, we've had a look on the EURUSD. We had a look on the likes of gold. Now let's touch base on S&P 500, of which after that we'll be closing off with the likes of BTC. So I'd like you to sit back, relax as we go through this price one after the other. All right. So with that said, here on the 4-hour time frame on S&P 500, for some reason, I don't know why my chart is not loading up fine there. So I'm going to do UX500, and I think I know the reason why. It's because I'm looking at the wrong chart. All right, this is the chart that I want to see, UX500. All right, so looking at this on UX500, there's a clear understanding of we have a market that is a bit extended, okay, and there are opportunities or times we price try to make some correction, but you can see it's been rejecting ever since. So what do we make out of this current price action? All right, so what I can make out of this is there are small chunks of how price is being delivered here. So the best thing I can look out for is only for us to align ourselves to what price is already doing on the previous quarters coming into the third quarter of this month, which is there are this tight build up, as you can see, very closely built up. It's looking more of like it's buying, but at the same time ranging at the same time. All right, it's not much on it is not much of an expansion on the upside, neither is it a total downward movement, but you can see there are some patterns of sideways movement in it and some upward movement coming into it. So for me on S&P 500, it's quite confusing for me, I have to be honest, but coming into the week I would like to watch and see what the first quarter of the week is going to do, which is basically on the Monday, to see what price is going to do on UX500 on Monday. So with that, I would now use to project what we think is going to happen entirely on the general grand scheme of things when it comes to UX500. And with that, we'll just touch base on the BTC before we call it a day. So here on BTC, for the guys that have been following this channel, I think we dropped a very important analysis on BTC and the general trend and what we think is happening on BTC. So just going into this week, we would also have an understanding of what we think is going to happen going into this week. Of course, the general trend for me on BTC is on an intermittent, if I'll put it that way, lack of better word, intermittent downward movement. And here's my reason why. My reason why is because obviously you can see since BTC hitting their all-time high, it's been going between 100 to 90k, 100 to 80 something k, and I'm of the opinion that we might still see a much more downward move before the entire market starts to buy up again. All right. So with that said, one thing that I can point out here is the Q2 formation. How and what I see here is extremely important, and I think that BTC so far has done a good job in trying to set that up. So what do I expect here on BTC going into the third quarter of the month? What I expect is a BTC that will be trying to sell, and this is my reason for saying so. The reason why I'm saying that is because remember I told you guys accumulation normally occurs in the Q1 and sometimes the Q2, and after that comes the manipulation. And if you look at the Q1 here in relativity to the Q4 there, you can see that there is a clear distinction that the Q1 is smaller compared to that. And also, apart from being small, just looking at the price action here, you can see that the Q1 pretty much is trading in the range that was created in the Q4 of last year, like the Q4 of the last month of last year, which is December. All right. So with that said, I am speculating that the Q2 that just finished, just right about now that I'm making this video, is already a manipulation in relativity to the Q1. All right. So what I expect now is if we can dubiously speculate with this trend line, all right, by bringing it up to something like that, we can also pick these 2 pointers too, like these 2 pointers here, depending on how you want to go about it. All right. So what I expect is a BTC that would be experiencing a much more selling pressure coming into this week that we are entering, which is the Q3 of this month. All right. And I told you the reason why. We feel like the Q1 gave an accumulation, the Q2 is a manipulation. So what we expect is for price to do what? Trickle down and start taking out those trend lines, of which if they are completely taken out, then we can see maybe a much more downward BTC before another buy or a bullish run will come into play. With that said, guys, we'll bring a close to this week overview of what we think is going to happen the next week, so we can do a recap before we call it a day. So the recap we have on the general market structure so far here on my FX adventure is on EURUSD. There is an understanding that we are in a downward trend, and we showed you that with the clear trend line which we drew by switching to the line chart to filter out the noise to get the actual swings that are important to us. And there is a clear picture that there is a downward trend going on around there, of which we are speculating that going into the next week or this week, if this trend breaks out and price starts to trade above it, we'll be looking for a buy. On the other hand, we also looked at gold and we said gold experienced a ranging Q2 of the month. So we are of the opinion that the Q3, which is the which this week starts, will be us expecting a manipulation of the accumulation that they did on the Q2. Then after that, we should be expecting an expansion. Then we touched base on S&P 500 or UX500 as the case is, and the only thing we could make out of that guy is absolute confusion because there is no clear path. I cannot read meaning to what is going on there, and that's why we said we'd leave it. Once after Monday's price action, we can use that to now build up our expectation going into the week on the UX500. Then coming to the BTC, which I just showed you guys now, is obviously we are speculating that we saw a Q2 of the month that was a manipulation to the Q1. So what we expect in the Q3 of the month, which is starting this week, will be, of course, price to what? go the right direction, and in the case here on BTC will be a sell. All right, and I pointed out some trend line also that BTC is using to build up liquidity, of which if that trend line is taken away would greatly and massively increase the chances of price getting more further down towards where the trend started. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed the video, remember to share the video with people you feel like is going to benefit from the information and the content we make here. And remember to subscribe, turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on any other video we'll be making, as we make videos here every day tailored for all traders, newbies, intermediate traders, and advanced traders. With that, I say to you, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye for now. Thank you.